This primarily is the key of it all. You would say it's the one common denominator between every man, woman, and child on the face of the earth since the beginning of time. It was what was initially perceived and ultimately comprehended as being ultimate reality. And I can't for the life of me know or understand how that ultimate reality eluded us. Every man, every man and every woman, every child, yes. This is the simplicity of it. Everyone has had a dream in which they didn't know they were dreaming until they woke up. And perhaps a nightmare, even a wet dream, would be a good example of that, where you wake up and go, whoa! That was so real. You're stunned. Perhaps it was to your relief that it could have been that real. Now we've been conditioned for, centuries and centuries and centuries to look at dreams in a certain way, and usually the first thing we say, ooh, what did that mean? But there's a vital point here we've been missing, and that is that in that astonishment that you experience upon that awakening, in essence you're saying, you're making an admission. And that admission is, apparently, while you were in the dream, you didn't know you were dreaming. Probably given no reason to suspect as much. And so, ultimately, in your state of mind in that context means not dreaming. Lucidity is extremely rare. Lucid dreaming, that kind of lucidity, is extremely rare. And probably the reason that this has eluded us is because, having looked into Stanford's research on lucid dreaming, you see that during one night you fall asleep, and if they track your brain waves as this happens, and when you go into the rapid eye movements, they know you're dreaming. And then between these rapid eye movements, you'll reach a moment of a pause or a rest. And then it'll begin again. And this happens all through the evening. And the fact that lucid dreaming is so rare is that if you can comprehend this, it may be that in that deep sleep where you have these REM states, that in the beginning of a dream you may have been born in that dream, perhaps raised in that dream, and perhaps die in that dream. Ultimately, without ever knowing you're dreaming. And so too in the next REM state. And it would appear that between REM states there is a species of death, of almost a complete cessation of that kind of activity. Wouldn't that be interesting if this was a sort of form of reincarnation? So you have apparently all these things, and probably the only ones you really awaken into, unless it's some real nightmare that goes beyond, is probably during the morning when you begin to surface from those depths, when you might wake up and remember a dream. But you, in essence, you come from dreams in which you do not know you're dreaming, therefore not dreaming, and you awaken to have a moment, oh, whoa, that was so real, and then you pass right on beyond that, because you thought, what did it mean? Didn't really look into it, and the next thing you know, you're in you're back in the real world, and you're not dreaming. So even that tiny blip, you might say, where the only opportunity we have to ultimately grasp this transition and the meaning of it between these two worlds and what it signifies is so brief. let's examine this phenomenon, this brief fleeting transition, and see if we can capture the profound meaning that it contains. Here you are, sitting bolt upright in your bed going, whoa, that was so real, right? And instead of thinking what it means, let's do that. Let's say that here you are in your dream, this is your dream, here's the threshold of awakening, and here you are, much to your surprise, having realized that it was a dream. Which means, when I say you have one consciousness, the question I would have is, this is a good one, I think. Do you think somehow that you could actually consciously set out to deceive yourself to the max and not be aware of it? It's a good question. Because this is apparently what you're going to experience. Because if you back yourself back across the threshold of that awakening into the dream itself, what you just admitted here was that obviously while you are here, you're not aware that you're dreaming. Okay, let's examine your predicament. Let's examine the context of this. Why don't you know you're dreaming? I mean, you think that you are yourself. You don't suspect that you're asleep in a bed elsewhere. You believe this is who you are and what you're doing. This is your natural world. The reason why you don't know you're dreaming is that apparently, since you didn't do this wittingly, and you somehow, oh yes, deceived in some way to not know that it's occurring, is because obviously what it is that you are experiencing is indistinguishable from the only world reality you believe you know. Whoa. There's a miracle in this, if you can comprehend it. This is where you have an opportunity to ultimately discover the true meaning of the soul. Mark this, Paul basically establishes the first Trinity, and he says, God, boom, and of the Father, and of the Son. God, boom, is a spirit. Let's understand spirit. Spirit is a soul. This is what spirit means. Soul means spirit. Ghost is another word for spirit. But in this case, we mean by ghost or spirit something like Casper, an apparition, a ghostly being, a spirit, a ghost, a soul, yes? An apparition. The questions you have to ask yourself in the circumstance of being in a dream where you don't know you're dreaming, and then coming upon that as, okay, something to explore, a possibility, is that where is this all taking place? And what, or perhaps who, is all of this? Let's take yourself. We will explore that. There is apparently, this is your soul who is manifest in this form. This is your unconscious mind. This is the anima, or the woman, or psyche, who ultimately deceived you. Yes, your fall, which is to say you're not realizing that you're in a divine construct, or let's say a totally spiritual construct, is the fact that your unconscious mind, your soul, the female within you, is in some way deceived you. I think all this is a little shaky. But let's try to see what meaning this has to us in this respect. Let's take yourself. Let's say you're in the form and likeness of a man, and let's clock this. You are a being, a physical being in the form and likeness of a man, and you do dwell in this very real plane of existence. We will call you, for our purpose here, God, and who is in the form and likeness of a man, and we'll call this plane of existence, as far as your domicile, your abode, we'll call it heaven. It's a spiritual world. Now it's odd, you know, the Christian God. In fact, the other religions used to mock the Christian God, saying, "What, your God has to work, you know, by hand and labor and work so many days, and perhaps, you know, hire on or delegate tasks to other workmen or craftsmen, things like that, and has to take a nap, has to sleep." What kind of God is that? Anyway, it's the case, and let's say that you are this male being in this plane of existence, and you're a little weary and you decide to take a nap. So let's say we accompany you to your pillow. And let's say we have Moses with us, and perhaps you're outside of yourself at this moment, so you can witness this. Let's say that we watch what you do as you lay down upon your bed and you place your head upon your pillow. You are in this realm. Well, this is what the Chinese would call the heavenly man asleep above. It's what the Brahmins would call, oh, the days of nights of Brahman, and this is his night. And or Pharaoh, the dream king. What happens here, Moses will help us, we inscribe a circle around that, your head. We'll call it Godhead. And your eyes, your awareness, your attention, which was looking out upon this world, when you close your eyes, apparently your sight turns inward. And what happens? Well, you fall asleep. And what happens every time you fall asleep is that your consciousness essentially dissolves into a void. And out of that void, if not instantly, very rapidly arises the universe of your dream. Or in this case, let's call it the garden of your creation. In every dream you've ever had, every garden you have ever manifest. Don't you always find yourself in the dream as yourself, walking afoot in the garden of your manifestation, among the males and females made in your own divine image and likeness? Well, that sort of gives you an explanation of how, perhaps, a being within one realm can actually manifest a plane of existence in another realm and actually walk afoot astride that plane of existence. Is this not what we would call creation? See, in Genesis, the fall, the original sin, the exile, all that takes place in almost an instant, you might say. And that is when Adam falls into a deep sleep. Then all these things occur. But nowhere there will you read, and then Adam woke up. Because Adam hasn't awakened yet. And this is Adam's dream. The Kabbalists' name for Adam, or title for Adam, is Adam Kadmon. And of course Adam just means man, it means us, humankind, the ultimate identity of the same being in all its many extension of selves, man. And Kadmon means supernal. So Adam Kadmon is the supernal man. And Adam Kadmon is understood to extend from one end of the world to the other. We'll touch upon these in the future with a few quotes from the Talmud, Zohar, other things. And so ultimately, it is Adam Kadmon who is the demiurge, the ultimate anthropomorphic expression of divine being, but the transcendent is, of course, recognized as being beyond that. So it is the Adam Kadmon who the Christians call our Father, who is in heaven, and basically it means the dreamer within his dream, the plane of existence in which the dreamer dreams. When Adam fell asleep, just as when you fell asleep and you were not aware that you were sleeping, what happened? Well, let's go back to the face upon the pillow, since it's Adam's head, it's Adam's face that we're examining here, and that we're calling our Father who is in heaven, man. If this is the being who just gave birth, or therefore created that universe or that plane of existence, we take a picture of this being upon a pillow in this instant development, but we go, whoa, what have we got? We have an image or a picture of a distinct person in this distinct place doing this distinct thing at this distinct time. And this is the person of God. Or in this case we say our Father who is in heaven. And so now what we would have then is a photograph of our Father who is in heaven, doing that distinct thing at this distinct time. Let's say if we could take the photograph of what we now have identified as our Father and dive into the Father's head, or into Adam's head, and descend from the clouds with this picture we just took, if only that were possible, into the garden, let's say, and it was just peopled with all kinds of faces. And if we were to take this very same photograph and look from face to face, seeing if we can find correspondence, we probably wouldn't find one until we turn, oh, this is your dream. Ah, wait a minute, let me check this out. We hold up the photograph, we look at you and go, whoa. Here you are again. Well, let's set the photograph down for a second, and we take out the camera and we take a picture of you in your dream. Click, bang. And what have you got? Well, here you are doing this thing at this time, and apparently you're totally quite alert. And if we could, only we could, through the third eye, if we had both of these pictures, we have to admit we have pictures of two different persons in two distinct places doing two distinctly different things, yet obviously the same person. And so, but in this case, we would say, since you appear to be the effect of that greater cause, then this person of yourself we would call the sun. And is not the sun, if it is a dream, capable of saying, I and the great dreamer are one? Oh yes. But look at that. You actually just were introduced to two persons of the Trinity. The third person is a little more complex. In fact, the most important person of all. If you were to say that the dreamer is the Father, and the dreamer in the dream, the dreamer of the dream is the Father, and the dreamer in the dream is the Son. I did this by the process of deduction. What else is left but the dream herself? And that is, of course, the Spirit, the Holy Spirit, the Holy Apparition, the Holy Ghost. This visible spectrum is a visible spectre. But she's not quite so identifiable as being the same person. There's a way to see that same face upon her, but it's in the negative of the positive. It would be as if you could take all that which surrounds you from that face and pull it back far enough, and you'll see that negative. It is the negative of your own face, impressed upon that great one face. She then is this entire phenomenon, this entire apparition, everything that surrounds you, this entire visible spectrum. Of course, if you're dreaming. This is your soul, your unconscious mind, your anima. Who, and this is where we begin to really understand the power of a soul, as above, so below. If you are in a circumstance and you don't even know you're in that circumstance, and you look upon this and you see it as being the only real material world you believe you know, no! It's a lot like Matrix. Know that woman, your woman, has the ability to do all the things that we do attribute to the divine. She is that which is responsible for this entire manifestation. She herself, extraterrestrial as she is capable of actually transforming herself into all this down into its finest detail. Whoa! And she is the Spirit, and you're going to hand it to her. You know, we say Father and Son, well, where is the Mother? Well, she said, this is the Mother. And you want to understand the power of the soul? This is why God is a spirit, a soul, God. Because if you were to wake yourself, the Father, in that bed and say, whoa, man, we're talking to an ego here. Whoa, man, how'd you create that world? And he's going to have to admit it. I haven't the faintest idea, but let me go back to sleep and maybe it'll come back into being. You could confront the son, the dreamer in the dream, and say, okay, come on, man, give it up. How in the hell did you do this? This is just... And you're going to have to admit, well, it wasn't you. So which aspect of you is it? Well, it is your woman who is responsible for all this. Oh, yes. We're going to have to acknowledge that. In fact, she is the end-all and be-all of everything. If the Father you call a cause and the Son you call the effect, you introduce to the Mother who is all cause and all effect. She is causality herself. Boom. And there is a drama going on. There's a circumstance. There is a relationship. Apparently she has something in store for you. Because this is a circumstance or predicament or, well, predicament in which you find yourself. There is a dialogue going on here at all times between you and your woman. She's up to something. I'm getting a little out of focus here as far as all of this is concerned. Before I go too far, let's say we see then where heaven is in that relative context. We see the nature of the divine being there, how that being has manifested a world, walked in the garden of his creation. We've introduced you to his triune nature, and each contains the other more so than itself, we could say. And probably the only thing that remains out of focus in that particular run of mysteries is its meaning in terms of immortality, or the continuity of existence. You might say, the continuity of consciousness. Let's say something untoward happens, I don't know, maybe some kind of an asteroid strikes, but it becomes a bowling ball and we hear it rumbling, the whole place shakes, and the next thing you know it comes rolling over the top of the hill toward us, and hey, I'm afraid there's nowhere, caught like a deer in the headlights, there's no place for us to go. And the next thing, whoa, crunch. Well, this is why they subscribed to this in Egypt before Moses inherited it, because it was the ultimate answer. In that context, you do actually die to this world. And in that instant, boom, resurrected on another plane of existence, going, whoa, that was so real. It's dream within dream within dream. And ultimately what that means is that you didn't really, at that point you're actually capable of looking back after that resurrection on another plane of existence and be able to look back on your life in that world and remember what you were doing up to that moment of boom, transition, death. Which means that death in essence has been conquered, you might say. There is no such thing as death in this context. Death is something we could explore to great depths and details in all the different ways in which perhaps we will find our way beyond that corridor, but not particularly right now. We will touch upon death as one perspective, an important one, in the third segment. The most important question right at this moment, the most critical question, and Socrates and Chuang Tzu and others have asked it. And it is the most important question to ponder, is that if you have, and who hasn't, if you have admitted that you dreamt before and did not know it, the major question, of course, then, is how can you be absolutely certain that you're not dreaming now? In your admission that this has happened to you before, it is in this admission that we find our admittance. The reason we don't know we're dreaming, of course, we've touched upon this, is because all this does correspond to reality, and we're talking about the substance of what is it made of. We touch upon an Eastern way of seeing, and that has to do with the four tattvas, which are the substance of the elements, you might say. But it is understood in their awareness that these substances are actually the expression of the fifth element, which is called the akasha, which means spirit, another word for spirit, soul, this apparition, ghost. And so, if we were to look at this properly, according to our physics and from what we understand of dreams, the substance of dreams, then you have to ask yourself, you know, where between your ears in that phenomenon would you say that you find such substance as concrete or pavement or glass or steel or things made up of things? All these are what you call the mask, you might say, the raiment. You know, we were talking about the celestial city in the senses. If you were to take and paint this city of light, this celestial manifestation with dull enamels, this is the chinks of your perception, your reflections, and what you perceive. And this is what is called the veil. The princess in the palace is the princess in this garden. And her nature is, of course, as a dreaming being. If she's all that's here, you take a glance at what we call air in terms of one of those elements. Carl Jung quipped that the soul means less than air to most people. But in this circumstance, in this divine circumstance, ultimately the air is the soul. The psyche that we breathe, which is life itself in every breath we take. And as the substance of the soul is the substance of the mind, is taking place in the divine mind, they usually, in terms of air being her substance, this is where the word comes into play, which is often used. In the beginning, there was the word. And the word, you might say, from any sparkle or from the ultimate transcendent being of all beings, the word is a sound or vibration that does basically move into and give shape to, in essence, emanates or becomes the form of all of this. And of course in the word, using the correspondence of the word is an articulation, you might say, of that vibration or that sound or that radiation of light, same thing in the spectrum, and that the air itself embodies that sound in an articulation or an actual form which then moves through space. That is the utterance of the word and the hearing of the word. And this word, in terms of being identified with Our Lady, is also referred to as the throne. The three in one. It's a contraction. The triune nature of ultimate being is her ultimate being. The throne, and one of her most important names to us in the scriptures of Judeo-Christianity, her secret is throughout. One of the most important names to us to her is glory. We call her Gloria. Glory. She's called the glory of God, the glory of the divine. She is the Word. And in every reference to the Word we'll come upon, keep this in mind. That Word is the glory of God. She herself, Gloria. We live and have our being within this being, a light within light. It is an embryonic existence, a mother and child, ultimate being. In our existence within her is for you to try to comprehend the nature of her symbolic language, her communication, her speech. You simply have to understand that in the ultimate dream realm, that the dream herself is your inside turned outside. Now, this is what they mean by zimzum. It's like disappearing into yourself and being inverted. And so you are in your own unconscious mind, you are in your soul now, and that is your inside, outside. And what is inside of you is now outside of you. And she is the, panoply, you might say. She is the whole schmear of all your tendencies, of your nature, all the qualities of your soul. And this is what would be called suffering the symbols of yourself, or delighting in the symbols of yourself. We're going to take and intervene here and do something that perhaps is unprecedented and is consonant with our theme, and because it will come into play for us. And this is what is called the unpronounceable, in Judaic tradition, the unpronounceable name of God, the ineffable name of God, which is to imply that it can't be pronounced. It's said, and I think you could take this to the bank, that one of the biggest libraries in the world could be devoted to all that has been written about this mystery, this name. But nowhere, at least in my awareness, has it ever been ultimately pronounced. To give you a sense of the weight that this name carries, you have to know that it is supposedly in the time when names were names of power. As it was said in Egypt, when Isis learned the secret name of Ra, she gained ascendancy. She gained Ra's power. This is the tradition of names of power. And this ineffable name is supposed to be the name of ultimate power, the name of names. It's said to contain within it its hieroglyphics. These were what these letters of the name originally were. The formula of both creation, which is understood to be a fall, an exile, and rectification, formula of redemption, which is how you can reattain, you might say, your original perfect state. This name is never to be pronounced at any time in Judaism, even though it's throughout the Torah, Scripture. And whenever this name is come upon, it's always another term or another accolade is substituted as Adonai or Elohim or some other term, but that name is never pronounced. In fact, in the culture, it was entrenched in the culture at the time. It is forbidden for anyone to ever attempt to pronounce that name. And whether it's the pronunciation is known or not, it is only allowed to be pronounced in Judaism, and that's only one day of the entire year. You might say full solar circle, and at the Day of Atonement, when the high priest of the synagogue can actually enter into the altar and pronounce that name safely. And the reason for this, and you have to wonder how myths evolve, yet there is some truth to all myth. The reason for this is because it was actually believed that if this name were accidentally pronounced, and in that culture, if you were lunatic enough in that day to make the effort on the street corner, everyone surrounding you would immediately grab you, throw you down, and stone you to death. How dare you put our lives in this and the existence of our universe in jeopardy? Because they believe that if you accidentally pronounce this name correctly, it would destroy the entire world. Phew. But the truth to this is that if it's comprehended, if the formula is comprehended within it, it is quite capable of destroying your entire conception of ultimate reality. This name is vulgarly pronounced in the West by some as Jehovah, others as Yahweh, or Yah. I like Yah. Another name, or another term most popularly used for the name by mystics and occultists, which you find throughout that literature, is tetragrammaton, or the four-letter word. These four letters in the Hebrew, written from the left to the right, let's say in our English, are, the first one is called a yod, the second one is called he, the third one is vow, and the fourth one is he again. These letters have a great many significances, the most important of which we'll touch upon. The first letter actually corresponds to the Father of ultimate being. The second one is the Mother of ultimate being, and then the Son, and then the Daughter. They're also called the King and the Queen and the Prince and the Princess. The fact that there are four letters symbolically means that when four letters are present, they represent the quaternary, which is the ultimate, you might call it the squaring of the circle, or ultimate manifestation. In this name, where these formulas of creation and redemption and the destruction of the world are said to be hidden, actually is in the relativity, you might say, of the hieroglyphs that were originally the letters before they became the stylized letters that they are. This is, of course, said to be unpronounceable. But one giant, well, a number of giant clues have been given to the apparent secret that is hidden in the name. And what we will present now is, you might say, medieval. It's an ancient, well, if you think medieval's ancient, it's a medieval formula for creation and the formula for redemption, which is hidden in the name. And it's enigmatic, it's a riddle, and good luck in an interpretation of that, perhaps up until now. But the formula of creation is said to be thus. The father unites with the mother and produces twins, a son and a daughter. This is called creation. And nothing more is said about it than that. But let this be our guide in what we're about to explore. The formula for redemption would seem to be just as enigmatic. The son goes forward to the daughter, embraces her, uplifts her, turns, and places her upon the throne of the mother, thereby awakening the eld of the All-Father. This is called redemption. And I believe it's at the heart of the fairy tales of Snow White and Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella. Let's take a shot at pronouncing this name now with our key. The formula of creation, then, is where we have the Father, who is in this case the supernal man, Adam Kadmon, before this fall, in his garden. The Father places his head upon his pillow, and by so doing unites with the mother, which is the unconscious, his unconscious mind. He unites with his soul. The Father unites with the mother. The waking consciousness of that ego unites with the unconscious. And what happens when your waking consciousness unites with the unconscious? You fall asleep. And out of that sleep, of course, we've already taken a look at this, come the son and the daughter. In this case, the son is unaware that he is dreaming. And so that is in every dream you've ever had, when you fall asleep and you don't know you're dreaming, don't you experience yourself as an individual within a material world? Yes, well, the individual here is the son, and the ego now here. And the daughter is actually the dream herself. But she is not perceived as the dream, she is perceived as a material world. And this is also what is called the night of Brahman, in the eternal cycles of consciousness, where Brahman falls asleep and forgets. And don't we all find ourselves basically as individuals within what we perceive to be a material world? That's why it's called a fall, this creation, because this is what we basically correspond with creation, being ourselves in the midst of this. Now let's apply our same formula, or our same key, to the formula of redemption. Now in this case, when the son goes forward to the daughter, you might say it's the consciousness, and we would hope it's the prince representing the royal we, the collective consciousness in the fairy tales. It's when the consciousness recognizes this fallen thing which was seen to be covered with ashes, her face darkened, is the Cinderella, the Sleeping Beauty, the Snow White. In this epiphany, goes forward to her and embraces her. what was perceived to be the material world. And that act of embracing is an act of love. And there's a lot more that goes with this formula than this simple explanation of it in that act. And by embracing her, uplifts her, and that is a transcendent movement. And then turns and places her upon the throne of the mother, recognizing her for who she truly is, as the Queen of Heaven, as his very soul, his own immortal spirit. And you cannot do that with the material world in that spiritualization by placing her upon that throne without perishing from what you believed yourself to be, and without what then is called the awakening of the eld of the All-Father, which is your own divine awareness, your own divine being. And then it is reduced from what was perceived the quaternary of the material world and has been returned to the grace, the sacred of that triune nature, pure spirit. This is redemption. For our future reference, let's capture these fires into 3 images which we can refer to, which will help us, enable us all along the way. I call them my bongos. Let's take the Father and let's portray him as, let's say, the head upon the pillow, but in this case, why not, the sleeping Buddha. His eyes are closed. You notice the eyes of Buddha are always closed. There's a reason for that. Anyway, the sleeping Buddha. And then for our second image, we want to cut away this head, and let's say we want to look at the sphere within. And in this case, we're talking about the unconscious, the soul, Sophia, Fatima, Gloria. And let's let this sphere here in the cutaway head of this dreaming being, let's let this let's say sphere of swirling water, maybe turquoise blue or with little sparkles in it, representing the unconscious, the soul of this sleeping supernal man. And for the other 2 letters, the son and the daughter, the prince, the princess, we have here the king and we have here the queen, let's put them together in the 3rd sphere. And this sphere will be the image of the garden. Large tree of life in the middle, Adam and Eve on both sides, populated with kids and animals and a sun and a moon, if you like. Anyway, and in this context, we will, of course, remember that Adam, in this case here, is called the sun, and Eve, his woman here, is basically everything that surrounds him, being the dream herself in the shape of the material world, and mistaken by Adam in this circumstance as a material world, as not ultimate being. The reason we would like to keep these images in our minds, and occasionally we will call upon them in our 3rd segment, is they will enable us to deal with almost all the enigmas, the riddles, the mysteries that we're about to explore in this next phase. In this next and final leg of our journey, we're going to meet some of the finest intelligences to ever grace the world. And we'll hear from them. A good opening here, to give you an example, is the Dalai Lama says this, 7 words, nothing more. It is a dream, locked within a dream. And there are lots of ways you can take this, but let's go straight to the heart of the matter. What he means by a dream locked within a dream, the first dream is what we call in the East Maya, which is the illusion of a material world. And the second dream is the spiritual ultimate reality of being, which we are locked into. And so this Maya is our prison. And we apparently are locked into Maya here, the experience of a material world. And our hope, of course, is to find our way to unlock this illusion and find our way back to our ultimate being, our ultimate grace of ultimate reality. And the key which we have presented enables us to do that. And I say it not only enables us to do that, but it will also enable us to unlock all the riddles and enigmas to follow. And those we are going to meet now are those I call the true Illuminati. And I'm an unknown factor here. This is just another individual with an opinion and some ideals. Who am I, ultimately? What do I know? And so, in essence, let's turn to all these other powers that you will recognize that we do believe to be truly enlightened beings, the true Illuminati. And let them, from every direction, the fount of all religions, in the vernacular of the religions and the avatars, church fathers have said, let all of them reiterate what it is we have said in this sharing. And let them do it in their own words.